Welcome to Fringe Pop 321, the show that believes the world is stranger than we think, but thinking should not be strange. You know, every Easter season comes with pretty predictable patterns. This last Easter was no exception. Churches are more filled than usual, except maybe for Christmas. Stores everywhere are decorated with images of rabbits and eggs, the sight of which, of course, serves as backdrop for Facebook feuds about how Easter is actually a pagan holiday. But shoppers at grocery stores will be treated to another predictable pattern. In the checkout lines at the impulse shelves, you're going to see all sorts of magazines whose headlines feature some variation of the Christ of Easter or the Christ of faith versus the historical Jesus. Now, the implication of these headlines is that there's some sort of disconnection or contradiction between a risen Christ and the historical Jesus. And you know, that's no accident. This concerted effort to sort of inundate the popular culture with this contradiction started nearly 30 years ago. The point of origin is fundamentally something called the Jesus Seminar and the efforts of popular media to popularize the Jesus Seminar, which is actually a narrow, pretty idiosyncratic form of New Testament scholarship that has been, again, picked up and popularized for decades. You know, in the infantile blather of the magazine sources, the Jesus Seminar is ostensibly a group of New Testament scholars whose work has led to an authentic presentation of what Jesus actually said. And surprise, it's only a small fraction of what you'll actually read in the New Testament. So you might wonder, how in the world did this Jesus Seminar form? How did they come up with these ideas? What was their procedure for doing this? Do scholars still care about this? Is this really representative of mainstream New Testament scholarship? What is all this stuff? And why do I keep seeing it every year? Well, let's find out. So what's up with the Jesus Seminar? Well, for starters, what the magazines don't tell you is that many New Testament scholars, really the majority of New Testament scholars, consider the ideas and conclusions of the Jesus Seminar as radical. In other words, this is one of the rare instances in scholarship where mainstream scholars, or the majority of scholars within a discipline, will turn and look at their colleagues and say, "What in the world are you talking about? Where in the world are you getting these ideas?" That's not just my assessment. For example, Ben Witherington, who is a mainstream Jesus scholar, writes the following in his Jesus Quest, which is a book on the historical Jesus. Quote, "The Jesus Seminar has received a tremendous amount of attention as a result of its controversial procedures and results and its concerted marketing campaign. The seminar itself is almost exclusively made up of North American scholars, and it is founded and dominated by a few of the more radical Jesus scholars in the United States. Many of the major university religion departments, graduate schools, and seminaries are not represented at all." Unquote. Now, Witherington goes on to point out that the goal of the Jesus Seminar from the outset was to very publicly undermine the traditional views of Jesus. The seminar began with their conclusions already in mind. And honestly, that really isn't scholarship. It is not objective thinking. Intentionally, outside mainstream scholarship was excluded. Witherington writes again, and he says, quote, "One of the notable characteristics of the Jesus Seminar is that it is not a group sponsored by either of the two major scholarly guilds, the Society of Biblical Literature or the European Society for the Study of the New Testament. Instead, it is a group sponsored by the late New Testament scholar Robert W. Funk, who created his own publishing entity to publish what the seminar concluded. So membership in the Jesus Seminar only includes those who share the conclusions it begins with, and it's idiosyncratically exclusive of mainstream New Testament scholarship, and it self-publishes its results to avoid peer review." Unquote. Well, that's nice. That is a recipe, again, for radical, idiosyncratic, self-serving scholarship. And this is how mainstream New Testament scholars, like Witherington and many others, assess the Jesus Seminar, because the Jesus Seminar was very transparent from the beginning that this is what it's trying to do. And you run into this on the internet or on TV, and it makes, the presentations make it sound like the Jesus Seminar speaks for the majority of New Testament scholars and mainstream New Testament scholarship. And that simply is not the case. Now, the Jesus Seminar, as we mentioned, starts with certain assumptions out of the gate and then looks to mold and craft a procedure and a theory to justify the assumptions and conclusions that it begins with. And this is all about the Jesus of the Gospels. Intentionally, they are trying to undermine the traditional face value reading of the Gospel sources. Here are some examples of their assumptions. Number one, they believe that Jesus was actually illiterate. He couldn't read or write. Number two, Jesus had no interest in Scripture, which of course makes sense. If he can't read, why would he be interested in it? Third, Jesus had no interest in eschatology, that is, the time of the end, sort of his place in history toward the end of days and being a messianic figure. And that leads to number four. Jesus, according to the Jesus Seminar, did not think of himself at all as Israel's Messiah or in any sense divine. So in other words, some of these scholars think that almost everything of importance that is affirmed in the New Testament gospel stories, that all that stuff is just wrong. It's misguided. Again, these are the seminar's starting points. These ideas don't derive from research. This is where they begin. The Jesus Seminar meets twice yearly to discuss the gospel content among its members and vote. They actually vote on the authenticity of the material. They use a color-coded system of balloting. They use colored marbles, in fact, which is kind of comical when you think about it. They're playing marbles that correspond to a reliability scale. Red means that Jesus said it or something pretty much like it. Pink means Jesus probably said that. Gray is it's doubtful Jesus said it. And black is this is to be totally rejected. Jesus never said this. In the early years of the Jesus Seminar, these votes became the basis of color-coded editions of the Gospels or parts of the Gospels. For instance, again, this is all self-published. The Jesus Seminar might publish editions of the Gospels, the full Gospels, or just maybe, for example, the parables, a little book on the parables. And it would color code what Jesus really said or certainly didn't say for really the gullible readership. Now here's what the Lord's Prayer would look like in terms of the Jesus Seminar. Take a good look at this, remembering that black is stuff that Jesus never would have said at all, and gray is he probably never said that. According to the Jesus Seminar, the only thing that Jesus said for sure, again the red, in the Lord's Prayer was, Our Father. That's it. That's a pretty short prayer. A few phrases are considered probable, among them, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, give us this day our daily bread, and that's pretty much it. Everything else in the Lord's Prayer, Jesus never actually said, according to the Jesus Seminar. I guess it's easier to memorize this way, but there you go. This is what they're doing, and they're publishing, and their work actually gets marketed very well on the impulse shelves on grocery stores every year. So the next time you see a TV show about the historical Jesus versus the Christ of faith, and the Jesus Seminar is mentioned, this is what you're getting. Now it should be clear that the fundamental problem with the Jesus Seminar is its intentional, not subconscious, its intentional bias. The Jesus Seminar openly begins with a set of assumptions and then goes in search of data to prove those assumptions. In real-world clear thinking, the opposite is how things are done. You first examine data and then you draw conclusions. Let's just take a look at some of the examples of the assumptions that the Jesus Seminar makes or starts with. Remember, according to the Jesus Seminar, Jesus had no interest in Scripture. And of course, he was illiterate. So he has no interest in the Hebrew Bible or what we call the Old Testament. Now, this makes zero sense. Jesus was, at a minimum, a religious teacher. So what did he teach his Jewish audience if he had no interest in their Bible? What did he teach them? In reality, the New Testament Gospels have Jesus quoting from well over half the books of the Hebrew Bible. In fact, Jesus quotes from all the books of the Torah and most of the prophets. So this assumption, again, this is just one example, is just nonsense. And for the Jesus Seminar, its conclusions are only as good as its assumptions. And this is a deeply flawed assumption. Again, Jesus, the Jewish religious teacher, teaching a Jewish audience, but having no interest in their Bible. How does that make sense? It's no wonder that the Jesus Seminar is viewed by most New Testament scholars as sort of a curiosity at best. Thanks for watching this episode of Fringe Pop 321. Please come back and watch more of our episodes. And don't forget to visit our website, fp321.com, for more detail and more source material, because what you know may not be so.